'Cause you had a bad day, you take one down, you sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know, you tell me don't lie, you were gonna smile and you go for a ride. You had a bad day, you see what you like, and how does it feel? One more time, you had a bad day, you had a bad day.
So we're continuing our series of talks in January called Life Sucks. And I don't know about you, I'm not really like the guy that's like super pumped to go to warm tropical places. Like I like it, I'm not a psychopath. I love a good beach, I love a good vacation in Mexico or Hawaii, but I don't mind cooler weather. I find that I can sleep better when it's not really, really hot in my house. And I just don't mind fall. Fall's great. But when you wake up and you look at the thermometer and it's like minus 45, life sucks. And you're just like, man, like I could die if I go outside. Like literally, I think, who decided that we should live in Edmonton? Like who came here? I think of like the pilgrims coming across on chuck wagons and they're like, if we go outside at all, we'll die. We should set up camp here. Bad decision. I'm shocked that anyone survived or made it at all, but I'm glad you guys made it. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for braving the cold, braving the icy roads to be here with us tonight, and we're going to have a good time. But I want to talk to you about a time where I actually personally had that deep feeling of my life sucks. And maybe some of you can really feel this one. Maybe you've been there on some level, but let me tell you, this was a little embarrassing. I've had a few of these. I've had a lot of embarrassing moments. I seem to make crippling mistakes at the worst possible times, and they always happened when I was trying to impress a girl, to be honest. So guys, honestly, if you want to impress a girl, don't try to impress a girl, because it just seems like things fall apart. But I was on my way back from a Christmas banquet for my college, actually from there to go to this other party after. And this was for a Bible college, so no one was getting drunk. No one was really partying. It was just like a banquet for the Bible college. And we're driving through downtown, going to the next stop. And I'm stopped. If you're downtown, it's just long streets of street light after street light after street light. And I'm sitting at one, and I'm talking with my friends. The girl I'm trying to impress is in the car, and you're just, you're trying to just look cool. You don't want to look like one of these guys. You want to at least look like you've driven before. Like I'm a really cool driver that you want to date, because look how cool I drive. The logic isn't there, but it was what we were thinking. And I'm talking to my friend. I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and then I see the light go from red to green in front of me, in my periphery. So what do you do when the light turns green? You go through the light. But to my surprise, there was another set of lights that came on behind me that were red and blue. Confused and perplexed and a little unhappy and offended, to be honest. I was like, what's going on? And sure enough, the policeman came to the window and he informed me that the light that I'd gone through was red. You see, the light that had turned green was like 2 or 3 lights ahead in my periphery. So not only did I run through a red light, I had come to a complete stop for about, like a whole minute, and then just decided to full steam through a red light with a police officer sitting literally behind me for the entire time, and he's probably just like, what's this guy doing? What is wrong with this guy? And I could not convince him I had not been drinking. He was very, very convinced, and he wouldn't believe my story at all, but eventually he just realized I hadn't been drinking, I was just an idiot. And that was what we had come to terms with. But he had some pity on me. He had some just really was kind to me, and he kind of gave me a warning more than anything. Actually, I showed up to see if I get the ticket put lower, and he had put the wrong date, I think on purpose, and it got thrown out. And I was like, oh, you're a college kid. You can't afford a red light ticket. You can't afford it at any time. But back then, that was a huge concern for me. But in that moment, you're sitting there, and the policeman comes, and you realize that you've made that type of mistake to your bank account. You made that type of mistake just in general, that you feel like you're a complete moron, but also just that, there's this person that you're trying to impress and gain the respect of, but at this point, I don't think it's going to work out. And you feel like, man, I just screwed up. Like in those moments, life sucks. You just are like, man, I wish I could go back. That's embarrassing. Like, how did I do that? Like, what a stupid thing to do. And this is a pretty small one, like a ticket that got thrown out, a mistake. It was pretty dangerous. That cop probably was just like losing his mind, like what's wrong with him? But I think we've all been there a little bit before. Have you ever made a mistake that you deeply, deeply regretted? Have you ever done something that you're just like, man, like that was the worst thing I could have done. That was so dumb. I can't believe I did that. Like, who was I? It was like I was a different person. My brain turned off. I would have never made that decision now. What was I thinking? So maybe for you, like you borrowed a friend's car. I've heard friends who did this, and then you crashed said friend's car. And it's like, that's a bad feeling. That's a hard one to explain to your best friend. Hey, thanks for your wheels, but they're destroyed. Maybe you've pocket dialed somebody before and accidentally talked some smack about them or something like that. I remember when I was in high school going into college, one of my college professors, I knew him already, and I played on a football team with him. He's a great guy, but he's a terrible football player. I'm just kidding. He just had a really bad game. And his name started with an A, and on these old flip phones, they were even more susceptible to butt dials. And let me tell you, it phoned him and left, this is how long ago it was, left a message on his answering machine as me and my friend just went off about how horrible he was at football. And it's like, when he came and told me that, it was like, my life sucks. I just want to crawl in the hole and die. I just want to never be seen again. But maybe you've had a text. Have you ever done this one? This is the worst one. And I haven't done this in a long time, but where you are thinking about texting your friend because you want to tell your friend that Sarah is a pain at work. She's a pain, and I just can't handle it anymore. Like, aren't you just sick of Sarah? Aren't you just sick of this about her? But then somehow the wires get crossed in your brain, and then you text Sarah that you don't like Sarah? Awkward. It's very awkward. And you feel like, man, life sucks. Or maybe it's something a little bit bigger, or a lot bit bigger. You've maybe went to that party that you didn't want to. You drank a little bit too much, and next thing you know, you did something or you said something that you can't take back, and now your reputation has changed drastically. And you wish you could go back and change that. You wish you could go back and not have that moment happen. Just make a slight variation in your life, in your decision making. Or maybe you were in a relationship and you cheated. Or you're in a relationship and you said some horrible things and you did things that were selfish and were rude and were mean, and it broke down, and it's because of you. And it's not even that the relationship is gone, but it's the fact that you did that and you hurt somebody. And you realize and you feel like that's who you are. Life sucks. Or maybe it's your addiction. It went from a casual smoking, drinking, partying, just social thing, but now you're finding yourself stuck in this perpetual cycle of substance abuse, and it just seems like you can't escape it. And you regret ever taking that first sip, ever trying that drug for the first time, ever going to that website for the first time when you were younger, and it's just gotten out of control, and life sucks. So let me ask you, have you ever felt totally hopeless after a mistake? Have you ever felt totally hopeless? We all have moments of hopelessness where we feel like there's no hope. Like we have those, but have you ever had true hopelessness? Like where you feel like you're defined by this mistake, you feel like I did this and I'm stuck in this, and beyond just being identified by this mistake, you feel like this is something you'll never be able to get past. You'll never be able to move on from. No one will ever forgive you, including yourself, because this thing is unforgivable. So I want to take a look, as we're looking through different people in the Bible in this series, different historical people that made big mistakes or that had their life suck, and how they worked through that, how they were able to take the situation they were in and how they navigated that, and what we can learn and apply that to a Jesus-based life. And so I want to look at two people who actually have a fairly common beginning, and we generally don't think of looking at these two people together in this context, or at least I really hadn't before this all that much. But they were two people who were disciples of Jesus. And his disciples were these 12 young adult guys that followed him everywhere, that left everything in their life behind to follow him and to just learn from him and live with him, traveling from city to city, a disciple or somebody who was patterning their life after his teachings and who felt like this was a valuable use of their time. That's a big commitment to make. And these two people not only were one of his 12 closest friends and followers, people he was mentoring, but they were people that were said to be in Jesus' inner circle. So like the 12 disciples, that's a pretty inner circle. There was kind of the most trusted people within that as well. And the two people I want to look at is first Judas and then also Peter, two of the disciples. Now Judas, let's start there. There's not a lot of moms who are expecting to give birth anytime soon who are circling Judas on the list of baby names. They go, little Judas, such a future, so much hope. It would be kind of seen as a subtle form of like unkindness to your child to name your child Judas. If there's any Judases in the room, I apologize. There's nothing against you. We're just going statistically here. I'm sorry that happened. But listen, we don't talk kindly about Judas. Judas is not seen as a good guy. If this was wrestling, he would be the bad guy, the heel. He is the bad character in everything. When we hear Judas, we're like, yeah, that Judas. He's a bad dude. Everything about him, it just says this visceral reaction of like, no one looks at the Bible like, I want to be like that guy. That's the guy I want to be like. No one likes Judas. Bad dude. But did you know that there was actually, like, he was pretty trusted. He had a lot of responsibility. He wasn't just like, I always thought of him like whenever they were traveling, like all the other 11 disciples are just in a pack hanging out, just talking. And they got Judas behind there with like a curly mustache and a top hat, just kind of like scowling and thinking of ways to steal their money. And like, I don't know, he's just like a bad person. But that wasn't it at all. He was actually the treasurer of the group. He was the guy who was trusted with the money bag. He held the bag. He was the person who would take care of all the finances, which means that not only did he have the respect and trust of the group, he had the respect of Jesus, who is God. That's a pretty high level of respect. That's a pretty significant social standing within the inner circle of God himself, man on earth. So he's this trusted guy, but he had kind of a weakness. And listen, we all have weaknesses. We all have varying degrees of weaknesses. We're all wired differently. There is a predisposition towards certain depravities, certain sins, certain mistakes that we can make that individually we're going to be more drawn to than others. It doesn't make us evil. It doesn't make us bad, but it means that we have to be on guard and be aware of those things so that we can stop ourselves from falling into traps that come with that temptation. And his was money. That's a pretty common one. Money was his weakness. The love of money was Judas's weakness. And that was used in the most offensive, horrible way that I can think of. Because he, first of all, just had this history before he did anything that was really the most memorable thing of actually stealing from the disciples. If you're starting to dip your hand and take a couple coins out of God's money bag, you're a brave dude. You got a bit of a problem, I think, at that point, too. Just a couple shackles, just a couple pieces of silver. No one will notice, just skimming off the top. And it was known that this would happen. If you look in the book of John in verse 12, Jesus even mentions this to him. It's called out that, hey, this is the guy who likes to dip his hand into the bag and take money. And he had this thing where he would steal, he would cheapen his life. He would take shortcuts to gain a few bucks because that was what his insecurity was. That was the temptation. And we catch in Matthew chapter 26, verses 20 to 25. And this is at the Last Supper. And this was the last time that the disciples were all together before Jesus was crucified. And they're eating this meal together. And in Matthew 26, it says, during the meal, Jesus announces that one of the disciples will betray him. The disciples are saddened and begin to ask him one after another if it is them they're referring to. Imagine how freaked out you go, one of you guys is going to betray me. It's like, well, me? Am I the one? I wouldn't. Like, who could it be? But you start to question. You're panicking. They're freaking out. And so then the disciples are freaking out, and one after another saying who it refers to. And it says, Jesus responds that it is the one who dipped his hand into the bowl with him and directly says to Judas, do what you are about to do it quickly. Man, can you imagine being Judas in that moment? It's like, hey, the guy that's been stealing from the money bag, he's the one who's going to do it. And he just looks over at Judas. And you feel this sense of like, oh man, like he knows. He knows that I'm going to do this. He knows that I'm going to do something really bad. He knows I'm going to make a major mistake. And he says, what you're going to do, go and do it quickly. If you're going to betray me, just go and do it. Get it out of the way. He's faced Judas with this internal temptation, and I feel like this natural thing would have happened in his mind of like, okay, like, I really want this thing. Like, I don't know why I'm tempted so bad towards this, but like, Jesus is a good guy. This cognitive dissonance within himself, he's struggling through all these different ideas, and he has to make a decision. Now let's take a look at Peter. Peter's a little more celebrated, and honestly, Peter's my favorite disciple. Like, if I had to pick one that's favorite, he was a little bit of a wild card. He liked to live on the wild side. He's a little bit reckless at times. He lived his faith and his life with reckless abandon. When you live with reckless abandon, sometimes you tend to go over the edge and you can make a bunch of mistakes. And he was kind of known for doing a bunch of dumb things, but he also was known for having some of the most incredible experiences ever. Like when you think about Peter just alone on the story when Jesus is walking on the water, it's Peter who walks out of the boat and walks on water. And yeah, he freaks out. Yeah, he takes his eye off the prize and he gets scared. He loses faith and he begins to sink and Jesus has to pull him out of the water. But for those brief moments, for those seconds, Peter is the only human who's ever walked on water. He walked on water with Jesus. Put that in your LinkedIn bio. Get hired everywhere. What a cool thing. What an honor. I want to be like Peter. I want to be like Peter because he was trusted. I want to be like Peter because he had leadership capabilities, and that was called out by Jesus. And at one point, he even tells him he's going to have this special role, and that's caught in Mark chapter 14, verses 71 and 72. It says, Matthew 16 to 18, rather. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Can you imagine that? Like, that's kind of a bit of an obscure thing, but he says, I tell you that you're Peter. He says, on this rock, on the rock that you are, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. The gates of hell will not stop the church, and you're going to be a significant leader in the church that is to come in the future. Imagine you're Peter, and Jesus, God himself, is saying, hey, dude, you are going to lead something significant. I'd have a hard time keeping my ego in check. I'd have a hard time just even recognizing that as truth and fact and reality. Like, how do I keep myself grounded? What an honor, God himself, of all these 12 people, like, it's an honor to be in this 12. It's an honor to be in this inner circle. But man, like, I'm going to play this role. What an honor. Respect. Trust. And then at that same Last Supper, Jesus tells his disciples that they will all abandon him. That they're all going to move on, that they're all going to leave him behind. And they kind of all look at each other again like, how could this be? And Peter gawks at this, and he says, not a chance. I would never, ever leave you behind. Ever. And Jesus says to him, before the rooster crows tonight, you will deny that you even know me 3 times. How can you kind of work between that? Imagine you're Peter. How could that be? I'm the rock. I'm the leader. Like, you called it out in me. Like, don't you know who I am? I would never do that. I have all this respect. I would never leave you behind. Never. I would never abandon you. I would never deny you. Like, Jesus, like, you need to have a nap or something. Like, what is going on? This is so perplexing, so crazy. I would never, ever, ever do that. After dinner, Judas goes off and decides, you know what? I got to go do this thing. I do love money. I want to move and get some more cash in my pocket. And he goes to the religious leaders that were trying to have Jesus killed because Jesus was a problem. Because the religious leaders, they were out there trying to have control, trying to make things legalistic, and trying to make all these problems. And just they hated that they couldn't politicize faith anymore. And Jesus was kind of scolding them and calling them out and saying, here's what God actually meant. Here's why you need to just have a relationship with God and not have everything be so rule-based and have all these issues. And they hated that. They wanted power, so they wanted to have him murdered, but they needed to find him. Judas goes and sells him out for 30 pieces of silver. That's just like a couple $100 by today's standards. He turns in his best friend, his leader, his God, the person that he committed his life to, that has committed his life to him, to teaching him, to being just so important in his life for just a little bit of money. And that's why we don't name our babies after him very often. But I still think that he was a human. I still think he had that tension. I think he must have felt sick to his stomach as he's doing it. Have you ever made a mistake knowing it was a mistake? Have you ever sinned knowing it's a sin, whether it was once or for the 1,000th time, and you know it's bad, but you kind of push that off to the side because you want this more? You're not alone. Jesus' inner circle did it. Peter, who is still, my favorite. I've met a few Peters, babies named Peter. Not a lot, but there's some. And the fact is that he actually didn't do that much better. Because then the Roman soldiers came, they grabbed Jesus, and they took him off to be tortured, whipped, and crucified, hung on a cross to hang until he couldn't pull himself up on the nails anymore to take another breath. It's one of the most gruesome, torturous, evil, sadistic ways that anyone has ever come up with to murder somebody for capital punishment. And after he's being arrested, he's being carried off or forced to kind of carry his cross and go off to be tortured on this cross, on this piece of wood to be nailed to it, Peter doesn't run like all the other disciples as far. He kind of lingers back behind. He can't just leave, but he's not going to try and stop. He's not being overly brave, but at a distance, he's kind of cowering and trying to see what's happening, which was fine until a couple of people saw him, and they're like, hey, aren't you that guy who hangs out with that Jesus guy that they're killing right now, with the rebel, with the guy that like, aren't you one of his disciples? And he's like, no, I don't. And we catch up in Mark chapter 14 with him, and it says he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know this man you're talking about. And immediately, the rooster crowed for the second time, because it had gone before this. And then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times. And he broke down and he wept. Everything that he denied and said wouldn't happen, it happened. Jesus said, before the rooster crows for the second time, you're going to deny me 3 times. And in that time, he had said 3 times, I don't know who you're talking about. I swear I don't even know this man. I've never met him before. The guy that's like, you're going to be a leader in my church. And he's like, yeah, like I love this. But the moment it turned rough, the moment the sea changed, he's like, I don't even know him. I've never met him. He's cursing. He's swearing at people. I don't know him. And yeah, he's panicked. He's scared. And I get it. He doesn't want to die. Surely he's thinking, I'm just the next. I'll be on the cross beside Jesus if I let them know. And I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would like to believe that I would stand up and, yeah, I know him. But what an honor Peter could have had to be crucified next to Jesus. And that's a hard thought to think through. But instead, he denies him over and over again. You don't think Jesus could hear that. You don't think Jesus knew that. He knew it before. He called it out. Peter denied it. So imagine you're Peter, and after you deny him for the last time, you hear that rooster crow again. And just the sinking of your heart, the realization of, I am who I am. In that moment, he has to look himself in the mirror and be like, man, I suck. I'm a bad person. I'm nothing like what I've been trying to show to the world around me. Jesus must have been wrong about me. I am not good enough. Clearly, the world is falling down around me, and clearly, I am just the problem, and I am irredeemable because no one will ever make a mistake worse than what I did. Peter would have been so crushed in that moment, but he was just scared, and he made a mistake, but he couldn't take it back. 2 men who we see as so different as we look through Scripture, as even in just cultural reference. 2 men who had so much but lost it all at the same time. Both respected, trusted, so much hope in their lives. They had everything going for them. I know they both have to come face to face with betrayal, with the fact that they did this horrible thing. One broken moment, and giving into their fears, their emotions, their temptations, and their sins, they have defined themselves and cursed themselves with this reality and this new identity that they're not going to be able to escape at any time. And in this moment, I can only imagine that they feel consumed by it. They feel just destroyed by it, and they're drowning in their sorrow. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a moment where you feel like you can't escape, like you're drowning in your pain, like you're drowning in your mistakes, like it just keeps piling on more and more and more and more, and you feel like even if other people don't know, I know. I can't escape it. I can't get out of this. This is like the tar pit. This is the quicksand that I can't seem to get out of, and I'm sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. I can't get over this addiction. I can't get over this thing that I did, my reputation. I can't do any of those things. My life sucks, and it's my fault. You're not alone. Through history, this has been the human experience for so many people. This is what sin does to all of us. And when we recognize that, we can see that we need help, because we're all going to end up in some moment, in some time, where we are feeling like we are not enough, we are not good enough, like we are broken. And the enemy, the devil, wants you to believe that, wants you to sit in that, and never wants you to escape that space that you were drowning in or you are currently drowning in. He wants you to stay in that quicksand. He wants you not to be able to move forward. He wants you to be broken forever and believe the lies about yourself that that thing that you did or that happened is who you are. It's not true. But you can feel that way because you're consumed by it. You're stuck in it. Maybe that's you right now. Maybe that's been you recently. I did that. That's me. Unforgivable. Can't be forgiven. After this, Jesus was murdered, and he died. And I imagine the grief for both these men, it would have sunk in real deep, real fast. Not only did I deny him, not only did I turn him in, did I stab him in the back, but now he's dead. It's not just words, it's not just an exchange of money, it's not just selling out, like he was put to death. I betrayed God as he was put to death. That's a pretty bad thing to do. I don't know what you've done in your life. I don't think that you've done that. And they felt in this moment just so broken. We even see Judas have this like sober second thought. He tries to return the money. That's how much he regretted this. And then they wouldn't take it. They kind of scoffed at him and no, like just get out of here. He can't undo what he did. He can't make it right with his actions. He can't fix the problem because it's done, and he's feeling totally hopeless. And I imagine Peter would sit in the darkness of his failure. He would have sat in his weakness, in his pain. And he and the disciples all kind of go into hiding, like they're scared they're going to get attacked. They're scared that they're going to be next on the hit list for these people because they were known to be Jesus' followers. They didn't exactly hide it all that well. He knew that he had denied Jesus, and he was scared that he was going to end up being next. And I can only imagine that every time he put his head on the pillow, that every time he shut his eyes or he had a moment alone, that he could hear that rooster echoing in his head over and over and over again. He couldn't escape it. The reminder of what he did, the reminder of who he was, the mistake that defined him. But Jesus didn't stay dead. He rose again. He defeated death, just like he promised he would. 3 days later, he rises from the grave, and he shows that he is God, and that faith in him means that we can have eternity with God, that there's nothing, even death, that Jesus can't defeat, that he doesn't have power over. And that is this incredible story, and that is what we're all about here at The Project. That's why we do what we do, because the story of Jesus is that he has power over death, he has power over sin, he has power over everything. There is nothing that he can't take control of. There's no situation that he can't rectify in your life, no matter how crazy and hopeless and dark and stuck you feel like it is. Peter sees him again. We don't actually have a great account. We know that he had a one-on-one meeting with Peter when he showed himself to the disciples after he rose again. But I can only imagine that that meeting was, number one, probably pretty awkward for Peter at the beginning. Kind of like if you run into an old boyfriend or girlfriend at a store, like remember we used to hang out and then I denied you exist and you got murdered. Like that's a pretty awkward conversation. But there was reconciliation. There was forgiveness. There was this incredible grace, this incredible forgiveness that I can't even imagine. And then Peter continues to go on to take that forgiveness and to run with it. If you look at the book of Acts, which is just the story in the second half of the Bible, the New Testament of the church that goes on to be us, the church today, it continues on. And Peter plays a massive role in the foundational building of the church that we are a part of now. Peter ended up still being the rock, the foundation, one of the leaders of this movement that has gone on for thousands thousands and thousands of years, that billions of people are a part of today globally, he still was able to move on and do incredible things. He was given back his respect. He was given back his autonomy. He was given back his hope and his purpose and his identity. He was forgiven of something that was totally unforgivable, but Jesus said, I don't care. I can forgive anything, and I sure will forgive that. And even though, yeah, you made a mistake, yeah, your life sucks, yeah, you did do that, I still see the potential in you. I still believe in you, and I still am calling you to what I always called you to. You didn't disqualify yourself. You are still valuable. You are still purposeful. You still have hope. And for you here tonight, if you're feeling hopeless, you need to hear these words, that there is still hope for you in spite of whatever your mistakes are, who you've been and what you've done. You will never outrun the grace of God. You will never outrun what God can do in your life. Jesus is standing there saying, I still have a plan for you. Don't run away. Don't believe the lies. You are still so important. Don't believe the lies. Don't believe the lies that have been said to you. Don't believe the lies that you believe and you've allowed to seep into your identity and your character. That thing that you did, sure, it might be really bad, but it's nothing that Jesus can't deal with. Peter denied him as he was being murdered after Jesus said, you're going to do it. He's like, nah, not me. That's crazy. And if Peter can still go on to be a useful, not just useful, but powerful leader in the church and be a historical figure and shake and change the foundation of Earth's history, of human history, God can change your life and can use you and break you free of what's holding you back as well. And he will. But Judas, not to bring a downer to things, he didn't make it to that day that Jesus rose again. Judas hung himself, and he died. I know that kind of when we look at Judas, we think of him kind of as this bad dude, and we don't really like Judas all that much. We kind of just sometimes take that approach of like, good, he's a bad person. But what could have been? Imagine what could have been on the other side of just a little bit longer. Judas was just hours, days away from the greatest moment of reconciliation, the greatest moment of forgiveness ever recorded. The moment where Jesus rises again, he sees the person that sold him out for just a little bit of silver. And he embraces him and he hugs the man who sold him out to death. And he says, Judas, it's okay. I still love you. I forgive you. And for you, if you're here today and you feel like you're completely too far, Judas wasn't too far. Just give it. Don't give up. If you feel like you're at the end of your rope, like you can't make it any further, you feel like there's no hope for you, feel like you're defined by this, like you can't make it any further, tomorrow will come. There is hope tomorrow. I don't know if it's the day from now. I don't know if it's 3 days from now. I don't know when their circumstances, when the chaos of your situation is going to settle down. I don't know that. But I know that the sun will come up tomorrow, and I know that if you just make it to the next day, if you chase Jesus and you follow him to the next day, you will find the hope that you need and that you're looking for. So many times in my life where I felt like I wasn't going to make it to the next day. We're like, why? It's just more mistakes, more problems, more pain, more trauma, more suffering. But the next day will come, and the next day will come, and I promise you there is hope if you make it, if you choose to make it. There is forgiveness on the other side. Don't give in to the idea that you can't be forgiven and there's no point. And if you by any means are in a position where you're considering ending your own life or something like that, obviously please talk to someone, please reach out for help. But know this, there is a future for you. You can't see it. You can't see the other side of the tunnel. There is no light, but I promise you that it's there. You might have to endure through more pain, but I promise you there is hope on the other side. And that hope, the only hope, that it will take a miracle to get to that, wherever this place that you can't visualize right now is Jesus, who will give you the strength to make it through. And I promise you that. No matter who you are, there's a few lessons that we can learn from these two. No matter who you are, no matter how good you think you are right now, no matter how your life looks, no matter how much you read your Bible, how strong you are, there's countless examples of people through biblical history, human history, church history, who have been on top of the mountain, but they've fallen really, really far and really hard because they let their guard down. And so never, ever stop chasing Jesus, because the moment you do, that's when sin will catch up with you. The truth is, you'll never have sin catch up with you if you chase Jesus, because it can't move at the same pace. If you're chasing after Jesus truly, I promise you, you will never, ever, ever get caught by sin. It's not about what we run from in a Jesus-based life, it's who we run to. And if you run to Jesus with everything in you, if you read your Bible, if you take time to pray, and not just like, oh, like, thank you, Lord, for this food, but like pray authentically and just talk to him. You don't have to make it weird. You don't have to talk in Shakespearean English. Just talk to God and tell him what you're going through and what you need help with. Do that. Connect in church. Connect in small groups. We got small groups coming out. We're better together. We're stronger together. If we talk to each other and we're vulnerable with each other, even though that's uncomfortable, we will be able to support each other through those times of weakness and hopefully avoid some of these things. But the simple truth between Peter and Jesus, Peter just made it to the next day. He made it to the next day and saw the hope, and he was able to use it. So know this, that even at your lowest point, God's promise for your life never fails. Never fails. We always say, Jesus always keeps his promises, and that promise for your life, the promise that he gives to all of us, it's caught in Philippians 1:6, says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Jesus started something in you. He promises that he's going to finish it, and he does not break his promises. So don't give up. Chase Jesus with everything in you. Not because it's some liturgical, legalistic thing, but because it will change your life and it will bring hope to the dark places in your life. God has so much more for you, every one of you, than you could ever imagine. And there is hope in your situation. Always. We just have to seek the one that gives us hope, and that's Jesus Christ. So for you, maybe you've never made that decision before to follow Jesus. You've never had that moment where you've actually said, Jesus, I want you to be Lord of my life, and I want to give you that opportunity right now. And it's just simple. I would say you don't have to do like an obstacle course. You don't have to do anything crazy or embarrassing. It's literally just between you and God. It's between you and Jesus. The acknowledgement that Jesus is God. He died on the cross, and he has the power to forgive your sins, and he has forgiven your sins, and that you want to follow him and pattern your life after him. And so if that's you, just pray along this prayer with me. Jesus, thank you that you died on the cross for me. Thank you that you are God, that I have forgiveness and I have hope and I have a future with you. God, I want to pattern my life after you. Jesus, I want to be more like you every day, and I pray that you would show me over and over again every time that I encounter you, every time that I wake up in the morning. I pray that you would show me more of yourself, and I would just have the hope at all times that you offer. Thank you for your forgiveness. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for what you do, and I just want to follow you with everything I have in this journey of life. Amen. So the band's going to sing a couple more songs. First of all, if that was you, we have a QR code that's going to go up on the screens, or you can DM us on our Instagram. Just let us know. Do not leave here without letting someone know, info desk, online, whatever, that you made the best decision of your life to follow Jesus. We want to talk to you about that and celebrate that with you. But the band's going to play a couple of songs here, and just encourage you, continue to chase after Jesus. Show God everything you have, everything you're working through, and I promise that he will show himself to you. He'll show his truth to you. We're going to have a prayer team come up. There's going to be a group of people who are going to kind of spread out across the front as they play. If you're dealing with something in your life, if there's something you need prayer for, if somebody in your life is sick or ill, or there's anything at all, it can be related to this or not, that you need prayer for, I encourage you to come up and receive prayer. If you need to be prayed for, don't leave this place without being prayed with. We want to pray with you. So let's seek Jesus together, and if you're able to stand, let's stand, and we'll sing a few more songs.